ask any country Russia invaded or terrorists invaded. And I have a question for you. Would the gloves be off if Russia attacked Texas?
Of course. Again, I'm fine with the gloves being off in action, but Avi asked about the rhetoric, about the
Oh,
diplomacy, and
about
I
the
answered him.
rhetoric, completely agree. Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, that was my question. Just to clarify, my question was on the rhetoric and the media exposure of Israeli leaders.
The best use of nation states' diplomatic power is to be uh, with a smile, with a friendly, engaging smile, ruthlessly massacring their enemies. I mean, there's no reason to tip your hat, and there's no reason to let your enemies know what you're about to do. In fact, and I'm not trying to insult anyone, that's really kind of dumb. It's not smart it's not a smart way to play the game. If you ever played a game of diplomacy, even or a basic strategy game, you don't announce your intent to slit your enemies' throats. Oh no, speak softly. Have a smile. We're going to minimize casualties. We're open to negotiations. Whatever it takes to draw your enemies into an open and vulnerable place, then you slice.
True. Agree with that one.
John, do you work in radio? You have a velvet voice.
Thank you there. No, I do not. I work in politics. I work in DC.
Same difference.
Guilty. All right,
John,
fair. Shots fired.
let us
Accurate.
know if you want to
Hey,
have
you speak like
a
a
bar
lobbyist.
meeting.
I speak
Let
like a
us
what,
know.
Brandon?
Oh, you sound like a lobbyist who used to
I
work
mean,
for
I,
Sluggy
I am a
Bottom.
lobbyist. Yeah, I mean, I work in what we call government affairs, what you guys would probably call lobbying. Yeah, my silos are Homeland Security and Defense, so I bring private people, private companies, and mostly I represent companies of 500 people or less, some 100 or less, and try to
How
help
about one
them.
person? Can you get Rochette some 155 mortars?
You know, my second biggest client is a brand new startup in North Carolina, hoping to win the first contracts for the spin up of the federal government for 155 private manufacturing. As you guys know, it's currently all made out of our armory, but the U.S. has appropriated a couple $1 billion to open that up into private manufacturing as well.
Hey,
But
John, just this is kind of important. Maybe we can take this in the back channels. But I'd reached out to the National Defense Contractors Association to see if we could like do something with them, like they could help us out because we're doing like phone call campaigns to what resources are in what congressional districts and kind of tailor our activists you know, uh, actions that were taken in regards to Ukraine and to Israel now, and was curious if you had any contacts with any of those associations. We would have like a master list of what districts benefit from what gear kit. That would be like incredibly helpful.
so if I'm hearing you correctly, you want to know what districts produce what X gear? Is that what you're saying, or?
No. Tyler and I put together a list, and so I can send it to you if you
I mean, anything on those two subjects of
whatever
helping
it's
Ukraine
called.
or Israel, I'm totally would do whatever I can. Just full disclosure, I'm not a big fish. I don't pretend to be. A big fish doesn't have time for spaces. I'm on the outside trying to hustle my way up to K Street, like everybody
So
else.
it's an argument. What it is, it's an argument for job creation. So I've brought this to various chiefs of staff to be like, hey, support this, both inward-facing letters and outward-facing support, because there's job creation. There's HIMARS in Arkansas. There's, whatever in Ohio. So it's a list, an ongoing list that we're putting together that I want to be exhaustive. And Tyler's worked really hard on it. And
So
I've added to
I
it.
can absolutely provide you a comprehensive list of who's making what and who and where source materials come from, which is arguably even more important. So you may make the high Mars in say South Dakota. I know they're not made there, but just stay with me here. But where's the tin coming from? Where's the metal? Where's the wiring? And that's how one program all of a sudden touches 15 states and like
I
twice as
love
many
this.
districts.
This
And
is
you
so
go
good.
and you
Yes,
go and you
yes.
talk to those congressmen or their chiefs of staff, like you're talking about, or even their deputy chiefs of staff, and you say, "Hey, look, that local 10 line, this HIMARS program will increase demand, maybe get them employing a whole new shift, or a 50% increase in one shift," and that talks. That really, as you well know, because I know CC, you run, been very impressed with your campaigns and your that you can just that people can just click on and talk to their congressman. That really changes minds on the Hill, and it also changes minds in the various state congressional levels, which is where I cut my teeth. I'm relatively new to DC. You have to kind of like with baseball, you have to do your times in the minor leagues at the state capitals, and that's what I've done. And anyway, yeah, let's. I know, rather than boring everybody, let's talk about that in the coming days off channel.
Thank you so much for that, John. And yeah, if anybody else has any thoughts as to Avi's question, please feel free to go. You don't have to raise your hand. We'll try not to step over
yeah,
each other.
but we had Mr. Pickles and Aristonkle's hands up. Just FYI, Tyler.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that, John. John, you have any other remarks?
Yeah, I'll be. Mine really kind of dethrones Avi's. So if they want to respond to Avi's, they should. I had a general question to the stage as well, but I'll bank mine until they've had a chance to respond.
All right, we'll come back to you, John.
We'll go to Mr. Pickleson.
Yeah. So I mean, quick point about the gloves off approach. So the thing with Gaza and Hamas and Palestine and all of that is that you have two options really, and there's no third option. You either kill them all, literally, or you have to live with them somehow. And kill them all option that might have been there maybe like 300 years ago. I don't know. Maybe it could be done now. But otherwise, you will have to find a way to, at the same time, not make them want to kill you, and live in peace. And it's extremely hard. For that, you literally have to wash your brains. So it's either kill them all, brainwash them, or continue the cycle of violence now. As far as the, I think it was Nick who was the speaker before me, before John.
Avi was for me.
Avi, yeah, Avi, that's amazing that you are in this position, and I hope this program works well, because the private sector only cares about one thing, and if you give them money, they'll do whatever you want. And I believe the infrastructure we have now for creating these shells are like World War II stuff, and before it's like ancient. So we gotta get this going.
Yeah, that likely was John that you're referring to.
Aristonko?
Yeah, I actually was going to ask Piotr a question, because he joined for a little bit, and we were talking about Mario's space before, and Piotr's fantastic. He's great news updates. He's quite unbiased. He's also an active participant in Mario's spaces, and so I just wanted to ask him like what he thinks about that whole situation and his take on it. But as John was speaking, I actually wanted to ask something else, and John, this is directed to you. So, we've been seeing mostly from the Democrats a contingent of congresspeople who kind of jumped the gun on the whole hospital situation and released some very inflammatory language in their Twitter feeds, and have doubled down on it and refused to delete it. And we're at rallies today. I'm talking about the AOCs and the Rashida Tlaibs of the world. And I'm curious, with you being in DC and kind of embedded in that world, like, how is that perceived? What's going on with that? Why is there this internal infighting? Especially because the Dems, by and large, aside from a very small contingent, are very supportive of what the IDF is doing, as are the Republicans. And so I'm just curious, from like your standpoint, being in DC, like what's the insider scoop, and how is this being perceived on the Hill?
To be succinct, I should be careful about how I answer this question. My job, my company's job, depends on being able to work with all parties all factions, because the only thing you can be certain of in DC is no matter who's in charge now, their opponents will be in charge someday. So you've got to be careful about drawing any too hard lines. But with that said, Rashida Tlaib, while a really funny person in person, like put a beer in her hands, she's really great. But she is in the tank, the definition of in the tank on this issue. And there's just not. I think it's a place of pure emotion. I can't defend it. Her branch of the extreme Freedom Caucus, Progressive Caucus, are just radically pro-Palestine and anti-Israel. It's both religious, it's cultural, it's ethnic, and I'm afraid I'm not surprised to hear what you report. I haven't seen the tweets you're talking about, but I'm not surprised at all.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, the news last night was essentially jumping to the conclusion that it was an airstrike. They tweeted it out. And not just her and AOC, there was a few others as well. And then at rallies today, with all of the evidence that came to light, spoke to that after it's been, essentially disproven and acknowledged as such by both the U.S., Israel, as well as mainstream media. So that was the context.
Yeah, I can only say I'm disappointed in them for not, particularly the more moderate of them, which in that group of Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, actually AOC is the more moderate. She's not moderate. She's just moderate by comparison. I'm surprised they haven't retracted. This is a complex issue. They got a lot of conversation today, both on the Hill and in throughout the Washington circles. I mean, the truth of the matter is, the two American papers of record ran with this story early, along with the Telegraph. So the Wall Street Journal, conservative, by the way, if anyone's unaware, and the New York Times, very much liberal, both led with 500 dead. Israel did it. It was a bomb. They don't name JDAM, but this was disastrous because the uniformity of those two articles from America's two papers of record in both sides of the aisle basically is as close to fact as we get in today's current age. So I'm not saying that to exonerate the congressman. I would expect my congressman to be very deliberative and to use their clearances and get the information. But with that said, I don't blame anyone from coming out ahead of this after seeing those two and thinking Israel did this. And there should be, and the reason I'm kind of calling a spade here is there need to be serious questions asked about these periodicals and their editorial judgment to race towards this with no boots on the ground, no reporters inside.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I have internalized and heard the message about the mainstream media being one-sided and not accurate for years. I really put it to the side as a relatively moderate person politically, a centrist.
Largely so do I, yes.
Yeah. I think that this experience has changed my perspective on this radically, and I know for a fact in my personal network and professional network, for that matter, that I am not the only one. And
this was really sobering. I agree with you. Really sobering.
Very much so. Very much so. Because what happened for me, and in the eyes of others that I know, this was like a quasi-conspiratorial, like just everybody being like, hey, the mainstream media is out to get everybody. There's a boogeyman. And it was just very quickly dismissed. And now I'm like, maybe the talking points I've been dismissing for over a decade at this point, maybe they have a little bit of grounding in reality.
I'm afraid I can't take the other side of that in this particular issue. It would be easy for me to say it if it were just the Times, because the Times has a very clear of late political bent. But the fact that it was the Times and the Wall Street Journal, man, that's like everything's rotten. And I still encourage people to keep an open mind. There's still a lot of great journalism out there. Both of those papers have retracted those definitive statements. But the problem is, at what cost? It's not just our congressmen who were fooled and our American citizens who were fooled, but other nation states take their lead from those papers as well. I mean, the sort of gravitas of those two papers is tremendous globally, or at least in the West. And so you can, with confidence, when you're NBC, say, "Well, shit, the Times and the WSJ have done it. Let's echo it. Let's get our own segment for the nightly news." And then you're over in France, and you think, "Well, geez, they're up on it. They wouldn't have made a mistake. They would have done the due diligence." So you call the editorial desk over at the WSJ or the New York Times, who you know, and even though there's the 5 hour gap, and you say, "Is this real?" They say yes, and so you run it too. And then all of a sudden, we've got grand diplomatic maneuvers by the president of the United States being blown up because of a lie.
And we have Americans, private citizens, and government officials whose lives were put directly at risk at our diplomatic missions
That's very
throughout
well
the
said.
world,
That's very
not
well
just in
said.
the region, but throughout the world. And yeah, I may come off as a firebrand in my spaces, John, but you know, I was doing that well before, you know,
So you're
well before
consistent.
this. Yeah, I stay consistent. I think it's been shocking for people, and I'm just going to go very, very brief on this. It's shocking for people who have not been paying attention. And I say that because back in the late 90s, I was the Secretary General for 2 years in a row of Georgetown University's National Model Arab League. And um, the the university campus work that is done by the far left progressive movement like DSA, others, their working groups work in lockstep with the quote Palestinian cause issues. And when we have students from from Egypt, there are students participating from like literally everywhere that had travel privileges to the United States. They would publicly say, Israel is bad because of their treatment of the Palestinians. And you ask them, okay, well, you know, not in session privately, but what do you think? Well, we don't want them. They tried to kill our king, or they did this, they do this, they do this. And we really don't have a problem with the Israelis or the Jews, but we don't really want these people because they make our lives miserable in our countries. So, anyways, I'll turn my mic off and let everybody else continue on.
I have no doubt about that. I've got some. In fact, we may even have a similar alma mater if you were at Georgetown. But so Aristotle, the other thing I wanted to say, and then I'll yield, is bear in mind. I'm not saying you've misidentified some bad actors here who are in the tank. You haven't. But bear in mind, all politicians on the Hill are occasionally prone, not all, but most, to saying one thing and then acting a different way behind the closed sessions. Some of the people I've named, I'm not going to say which one, but you could Google and figure it out, is very vocally anti-Ukraine. But if you actually Google their votes, is anything but. And so there is a game here. They also have to get reelected. They understand their districts and it's bent really well. I'm not saying this is acceptable or okay. I'm just telling you this is the way the world works.
But some of them do slide, and those are the ones we have to be careful about because
absolutely,
all of them aren't going to follow that pattern. Like Andy Harris, co-chair of the Ukraine caucus.
Amen. There are just as many who will do the other thing, right? They'll say they're pro-Ukraine and then not vote, right? So there's not, for sure. And then the final thing with Aristotle's question is, what's the read on the Hill? What's the read on the bureaucracy in support of Israel? In one sentence, I would say I have never seen more bipartisan and cross interagency support for a cause than for support of Israel. I think it is more secure than Ukraine going into 2024. And I think there's cause for concern on Ukraine given the election season, as I'm sure I'm not the first person to say to you guys.
Go ahead. I think it was either Miles or Pickle.
I'm not hearing him. I'm just hearing like mic beats.
No.
Yeah, I'm not either.
Can you hear me? I'm saying it.
Yeah.
Now we can.
Aaron first, and then Miles, and then me, and then John.
Is that me?
That's you, brother.
Hey guys. So yes, in Mario's space there is like and there's some good actors there, and then there's some bad actors. We know that. I know for certainty there's definitely actors in there that are definitely trying to spread disinformation, that are pro-Palestine, maybe they're maybe not necessarily pro-Hamas, but there's definitely pro-Palestine narrative people there. One of them is one of the main co-hosts there. I mean, he's got a space going right now, and then so I mean, it's Miro does a good job on some occasions, but the problem is you got all these other people there, and what are they there for? I mean, if they're there to spread disinformation and they're allowed to do it, it becomes a major problem, right? And this is a continuous problem that continues to happen there. So I think, the spaces that we do, like the Baum report. Oh yes, Intel. Are you guys all gonna hopefully be able to make it to the Baum report? I started in about an hour, a little over an hour.
Yeah, should be able to.
Great. So yeah, the Baum. If I could, I don't know if I could put it in an S. Could I or?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Baum report starts at 2200 Eastern. The military and open source intelligence space. I got a really good topic for tonight I wanted to talk about. But going back to the discussion, Mario is one of the people. The problem is that it's a platform space where you get thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people. So how do we counter the narratives of different disinformation there? Because it's definitely always usually the biggest space on Twitter. So there's definitely some real issues there that we have to try to take a look at, right? And I'm not saying that it's not necessarily always a bad space, but and I've been in there. We've all been in there. I've talked in there numerous times, and so yeah, that's just my thoughts.
I think you're up,
Keep
Miles.
going with the hand too.
Is that me?
Mile High Club.
Yeah. Okay. So just a couple things. I know Mario's concerning So, Aaron, I know you're trying to be impartial. It is impartial to say that Mario serves no impartiality, right? There's no fair and balance. There's nothing there. He does that as a hook.
Yes.
Make it seem like he's legitimate, but that's to help launder actual bad information. This is all this is what he does. Second, number two, it's really important to understand this. Mario doesn't, his audience isn't real people for the most part. I'm working on something now to have quantitative analysis to prove a lot of what I'm saying. But the way to think about it is 9 out of 10 users in any of his spaces, they're bots. They're not actual people. So if he's got 10,000 people in a space, maybe 1,000 are real. I'd be skeptical of that too. But it's just influence isn't what you think it is. So that's
and about that, because actually I was talking to somebody about that earlier about the bots, and it's not just there's other spaces that are doing that too, and that's another concern, right? I mean, with the possibility, Mario, I can see that, but your analysis, I'd be interested to see it once it's finished, because it is.
Even if it's 10%, though, Obama, if I may interrupt, even if it is 10%, Miles, or even if it's 5%, like when I was talking earlier, you could get You get the lead strategic researchers from CSIS, the nation's largest think tank and most important think tank, to come talk. You could get Michael Kaufman from War on the Rocks to come talk for 5% of Mario's audience, maybe even like 2%. They're
So
used to going to
yeah.
symposiums in DC. Trust me, I attend them, and there's like 70 people in the room, 110 people in the room, maybe. So you give them 500, 1,000 engaged people. I mean, you're going to be able, you can get almost anyone for that.
So
There's a
let me put this idea in everyone's head. You can bot too. It's really cheap. It's maybe a couple bucks for 1,000, users for an hour or something like that. If you want to, this is like we've said this before. This is information warfare of sorts. Not of sorts. This is information warfare. We're watching this play out in real time. We saw them set up over the last 2 months or so to lay the stage. This is them operationalizing. We can fight this too. It's whatever, we can get some bots and then we can get some experts in and make sure that they're not going into the alternative spaces. That's just one option.
So it's
Discrediting
interesting.
is
So
also a big
if
deal.
we,
not a terrible
sorry,
idea.
sorry, not terrible. I didn't want to interrupt, but I just to say, Miles, doing that, you're spending a bit of money to try to also make a little bit as well. Is it that's what their kind of mentality is, or I'm just trying to yeah.
Right.
I'm asking.
Someone that's speaking to 10,000 listeners, you're gonna if you don't know any better, you're gonna consider them legitimate. They have to know, why would so many people be listening to them if they weren't important, or getting important people. And then just like John said, people, especially researchers, analysts, like experts, whatever, there are only so many people that you run into in your life that you can nerd out about this subject of interest on. It's not very often. To be given an opportunity to just like do what you do best in front of 10,000 interested people, I mean, that's seductive to anybody. So
Absolutely, it is.
yeah, you're going to do it. But look at this, there's no botting going on here. We got 200 something people listening in. And I think that's
Just to give you an idea, Miles, just to rub it in and echo your point, there are active sitting U.S. senators that couldn't get 10,000 people in a room, couldn't get 5.
right. Yeah. And, so I think that's it's something to think about. Like if you're actually serious about treating this like a fight, then treat it like a fight. Arm yourself. You two can bot. You can do stuff like that. That's one option. I would also say it's important to give listeners a little more benefit of the doubt in terms of their own capability of assessing bullshit. I think the fact that like the spaces around here, especially Intel, Tyler, like Aaron spaces, they've all increased in the last week or two. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that people are trying to get information. They're seeing that the news isn't working, or it's misleading, or it's whatever. They're going to Mario. People like Mario, they're like, "What the fuck is this?" You listen to him for more than half an hour. Or anybody on that stage, you're like, "What the fuck am I listening to?" Like, this is just some crazy nonsense. Someone's going to go up there and spout some crazy shit, and so they're going to drop off and find someone else. And so as long as we continue to come together to help do the sense making, it will like what people come up here, true experts are coming up here and talking about. It makes sense. Like they're making claims that follow, like that pan out, right? You listen to Mario, he's going to make claims and they don't pan out over and over and over again. You're going to get tired of it. So that's also really important. The last thing I'll say, so I'm not just like endlessly talking here. What was it? So news media. This has been I think a lot of people have been, not a lot, but this has been a point being hammered by different groups for the past 10 years or so. I had opportunity to work at like the LA Times building with an investigative journalist there one summer in like 2013, and the entire floor that used to be filled with investigative journalists, it was just empty desks. They just there isn't the same news media that there once was. None of the people in charge of these have any idea how to make any money. What seems like these vaulted institutions, they are really corroded on the inside, incredibly corroded, but they, you can't tell, but they are. And so, just like 100 years ago, we had the yellow journalism era, right? One of the big culminations of that era was the launching of the Spanish-American War, because they had spent years getting everyone all
remember the
upset.
Maine.
Right, yeah, they're all upset about all this stuff, all these grievances, these things that are just made up because it was sensational. It sold stories, and after the kind of hype of that, and everyone, it got so crazy and sensationalized, and you couldn't use those papers to make sense of the world anymore. So people just stopped buying them, and they died out. And a new model of trusted journalists and independent research and all this stuff, like what led to the Walter Cronkites and stuff, that sort of transitioned back into normalcy and just straight fact reporting, that became attractive. And I encourage everyone here to just keep doing what you're doing. Just keep being serious about the truth, about the facts. People will come, because everyone's tired of this ridiculous news stuff. We saw it yesterday. That was the most blatant example of like failure to do basic journalism. Like, you just do two sources. That's basic journalism. Two sources to verify a claim before you publish, and they couldn't even do that. At the New York Times, they couldn't even do that. It's remarkable. So just keep doing what we're doing here. We'll be good.
Or faulty sources.
That was really good. That was really good talk, Miles.
I'll be honest. Like yesterday, like whenever I heard the hospital bombing, like my spidey senses did not come up. I thought that they had been warning these hospitals. I'd been talking about these hospitals since Friday.
We know they had bases there, so we believed it, right?
Well, I didn't. I thought it was likely, but I kept my goddamn mouth shut because I didn't know enough about it. And too many people aren't willing to do that, and it's not helpful when you don't know enough about a subject to go off and pontificate about it. It's and there is a shit ton of that happening on this app every day. And so be very cognizant about that and pay attention to it. And I try to stay out of lanes that I don't know anything about. So encourage everyone else to mind.
That's a great point right there, Tyler. Yeah,
and
stay in your lane.
That really is.
And I listen to people who do have that experience. And I don't. To be honest, I don't really care about credentials. I care about experience and whether someone is knowledgeable about the subject. I'm not necessarily all about the credentials, but I am about, do you have experience in this field? And it's pretty easy to suss out people who do and who don't. And
you don't need a doctorate, but you need to be approvable. You need to have made it a passion project, an object of personal study, or something and you're right. People can convey that in their manner of speech.
And John, just to clear something up, because I didn't want anybody to misunderstand, because there's like 209 people in here. I did not go to Georgetown University. I was one of the kids that went to ghetto mass as the upper crusties at Harvard and Yale and Brown like to give us shit for at the Model UN and Arab League programs. I went to UMass Lowell. So
I know that resentment from. I came from a small SEC school, so I know and found myself swimming in those similar waters, and I know that condescension all too well, sir. Still encounter it even now.
Oh, I'm sure, especially in DC. Jeez, oof. Man, good luck to you.
I think. Am I good to go?
Go for it, man.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, look, what happened yesterday was just insane. I was blown out. Like, in the beginning, I was like, okay, they warned, they bombed probably. And CNN was saying this, BBC was saying, I'm like, okay. And then people were like, no, like, you're misunderstanding. It's just, that didn't happen, and look at this, look at that. So then I looked, and not only did I find out that it's not right, I was like, oh my God, it's coming almost out of the hospital. And but I am still in shock for two reasons. How did Like, let's say, okay, we're fools, we're like little guys, we could get fooled. But how could you fool almost every single MSM, mainstream media channel? Not only that, like the level of coordination that you had to pull this off, like the press conference and all of that. I mean, didn't all these people knew it was fake? And I mean, obviously now we know. Like, didn't they know that we will know at some point?
Pickles, even Israel believed this reporting. That's what's so fascinating by this. Even they, in their initial reports, I'm happy to be fact checked, but I read Intelschizo's thread, so I'm 99% on this. But even they initially did not dispute that the hospital was downed. They just said it was. They just said it was not them. But so that's how much weight this bad reporting carried. That even the IDF didn't dare gainsay the Wall Street Journal, the Telegraph, and the New York Times.
Because remember, one side wants to be factual and the other is jump. So the ones who are speculating will always have the advantage of time because you're just saying whatever you want. And the others will take time and the narrative will take over at that time. And that's basically what happened. And I mean, a lot of people got fooled, including me. And that's just how it is. But as far as the Ukraine, supporting Ukraine upon with people who support Israel too, overwhelmingly people who support Ukraine also support Israel. And I'm there is this very small group of people who are like, no, you can't do this, or you can't support both together. Just for the people who are anti-Ukraine, now that they're seeing that almost all pro-Ukraine people are also pro-Israel, maybe that will lead to some sympathy. That's like, oh guys, we're like actually fighting the same fight, like we don't need to be against each other because that's right and that's left. Like, at the end of the day, we are on the same side. So for that, I just hope like we don't politicize, and maybe this war actually will put us back together, because everybody has a war now, right? It's crazy. And thank you. I forgot what I was supposed to say, but thanks.
Tyler, I don't know who was next.
Thank you.
It's CC. I think we skipped her a couple times.
No, you didn't. So tomorrow at noon, high noon, at the saloon, this idiot's going for the vote again. So I don't know if you've heard the reports, but they're even calling the spouses of reps and doing like the mafioso style threat of like, oh, pretty children, hope your husband votes for Jordan tomorrow. I mean, it's getting gnarly. What do you think? This question's for you, John. What are your, I haven't been up there in a couple weeks. What are your thoughts on the whispers in the hallways? Because this, are they just gluttons for punishment, or do they really think, like, have they not learned from Pelosi you have to know your votes? You have to be really precise about your votes before you call the damn thing. Like, what's going on as
This
far
is
as
that old
tomorrow?
emotion and action argument here. No, I don't think they have. Like, some of them don't care about those subtleties as counting. I have to be real careful about how I answer these questions, just like I was with the Progressive Caucus. I should probably switch to like an anon account where I can speak more freely. But I cannot make a prediction. I just know the obvious, the same thing you know, CC, that Jim Jordan winning the speakership is disastrous for Ukraine.
And why aren't any of the outlets pointing toward the fact that he tried to kill them in the very room that they're voting on his speakership from? Like,
this is why if you ask, be careful. But if the one person I might support on that is of the front runners is the one person who did not vote to decertify, as Jim Jordan did, as you know, as you just mentioned, and current acting Speaker McHenry did not. So while he does not have a snowball's chance in hell of winning, I don't think that would be who I'd like to see.
well, for temporary, for the 45 days we're till January.
Exactly. Yeah.
But this is the failure. This dovetails into the media conversation. Why on every single media front page was it not on? We're voting right now for the person who tried to kill some of the people who are voting for him. Like, it's bizarre. Like, they found the zip ties, they found the notes of what they're going to do. Like, there's empirical evidence. It's nuts.
Jim Jordan went on OAN and said how he was going to decertify electors the day before the attack. I mean, I'm
Yep.
right there with you. In complete alignment.
Everybody call those 18 either tonight, leave a voicemail, or in the morning. Super important. He still could win. So we really do need to call
he still could
those.
win.
So
It's too close to tell.
There's 18 Republicans that are in these Biden districts that went Biden somewhere on my timeline. I'll put it in the nest, but we really have to call them and leave voicemails super fast.
You've been following it a bit more than I have. I saw something this morning.
I've heard CC say this a lot, but calling and writing your representatives is not a joke. You can be tired of the mainstream media, or you can be cynical about politics. I'm cynical about politics, and I work there. But but the federal employees who work for your congressmen and your senators, required by law, have to track every call and every letter and the position it held, and compose a report and alert that congressman by law. And so they will be informed, and I can't speak for all of them, but many of them, that's their compass. Because if you're dedicated enough to call or to write, then you are dedicated enough to vote.
Yeah, they're called IQ reports, and they really are beholden to them, even if they don't want to be. Intel, what were you saying?
You've been following the speaker.
I can't hear Intel. I'm gonna sit down.
More than I have. I saw something this morning. Maybe you can fact check me. I forget the representative's name. There's like the sole Ukrainian American representative that's a Republican from
Victoria
Spartz.
Spartz.
Was it confirmed that she was voting for Jeffries?
No, she voted for Jordan. She voted against, in other words, against Ukrainian funding by voting for Jordan. I'm convinced she's a Russian, but that's a whole other thing. Or has Russian ties. She's Ukrainian, but I'm convinced there's some subterfuge there, because no one votes against Ukrainian funding when you're Ukrainian at this point. It's nuts.
Gotcha. Let's go to Nick, and then Jacoby, Leslie, and Dev.
Sorry, I'm going to back up a little bit, back to Hamas and Israel and all that. And one thing, to me, when Hamas came out and said Israel did it, and Israel is going to be careful. They're going to check to make sure they didn't do it by accident first. But it really is the Russian playbook, and you accuse the other side before anybody else has a chance to be honest. I mean, that's my take on it. And I think, and yes, it was mentioned before that it's the chance to be first, not always the chance to be right with reporting. But to me, just because Hamas was the first one that came out and said, Israel did it, they pointed the finger. I mean, that sounds exactly something that Russia would do. And that's just my feeling about it. And now that Iran has their lid lift off as far as selling weapons and whatever they want in the world, I think it's only going to get worse before it gets better. And so, we have to recognize this stuff. I mean, we've all been on Twitter. We all fight disinformation. But whether it's, and usually the first one, it's like, remember in the playground when the teacher came out and said, who did what? Well, the guilty one always pointed their finger at somebody else. And I hate to say this, in adult life, it doesn't seem to be much different.
I'm just going to be continuing my drive home here. Just keep going with the hands. We're all civil here.
Jacoby, that means you.
So, thanks, Kizo and Cece. My comment goes back to what was being encouraged or discussed earlier about, we could get our own 10,000 bots and or hundreds of bots. And I would question that approach, but also make a call to arms to everybody in this space after months and months, and particularly the last couple of days and yesterday in particular, looking at the news cycle and
R.I.P. that glass.
how easy it is for ordinary people to be capable of fooling and being fooled by news stories, by it doesn't take an extraordinary effort to share misinformation and share it repeatedly and make it sound reliable. And if we all just made a commitment to try and focus on being genuine with our information sharing and verifying information and disseminating it, or talking about it openly and teaching each other how to do things in a better way, that we wouldn't have to take the lead of a space that employs fake engagement. Rather, use real engagement, employ real people. Take the time to learn a few techniques, take the time to fact check each other in a real way, not in an argumentative way, not in a salacious way, in a slow, methodical, down to earth, unsensational way. And just make a commitment to just hammer away at what is real and what isn't. And if that matters to you, there's a couple hundred people in the space. If that matters, then just plug away at it. Learn something new. You don't have to stay in your lane necessarily. You just have to be a little bit committed to what's important to you, and plug away at it, and challenge each other to plug away at things. And that we can be those 10,000 real bots, just starting with a couple, 10, 20, 100 of us, just committing to it, getting to know each other, getting to network with each other, getting to network with other people, and committing to that. I really, it concerns me when you look at a space that has thousands and thousands of people in it and say, oh, we could harness that same power. Well, we could harness, actual real human power instead, and turn the tables on things like that. I see people rejecting that space all the time, and turning around and saying, that's not where I want to spend my coin. I want to spend my coin on things that are real, information that is real. Yesterday, is a perfect example of an instance where it's critical to get things right, and to question, and to hold people accountable, to hold people in power accountable, to hold journalists in power accountable. That would be my challenge, and I'll step back.
That was really great philosophy. I found myself nodding a lot.
Go ahead, Leslie.
Yeah, thanks, Jacoby. It kind of ties into what I was going to say, and maybe tone it down a bit or slice it up a bit. I just had asked Tyler this question of the spaces, like when they're recorded, you see the purple, the purple thing. It says this is the space. You can listen to it now, and it says like in Aaron's space. I just saw it said 3,000 people tuned in. That was the last space. So in Mario's space, yesterday, it says on that space, 3.4 million people tuned in, and today that was a 6.5 hour space, and today's space was 4.5 hours, and a mere 1.4 million people tuned in. And I was just curious, does that mean like 1.4 million different accounts, or I might pop in and out 4 times, so that counts as 4? And I was shocked. I know, like, and maybe they do rent bots and stuff, but and I think to CC's point, it's like, is it wise to, like, spend your coin in there when you can do maybe much more genuine work without that? But then again, there's a point to be made maybe for going in with facts, and like the people that can actually hold their ground and speak efficiently in these spaces when there are so many people listening, and maybe they learn something. Anyway, that's my questions.
Probably not unique impressions, as the term goes. It's probably just total impressions. So your second thesis, if you joined 5 times, you'd count 5 times.
Okay, so that's just for the space itself. It's not for the recorded space. That was only like the live. It's not like how many people also tuned in and listened to the recording. I think it's just I think it just means the live space.
You're probably right, but I can't speak to that. Maybe Miles can.
Beep boop. Yeah, but we don't have to talk about it. That was my I just wanted to let people know that. Thanks.
Yeah. All I know in terms of like yesterday's space, and I wish I had the opportunity to actually speak today. But I mean, like 30 million impressions for that space when it was running. Probably 60 million impressions on his tweets, his so-called analyses, very elementary logical fallacies that were going on in those assessments.
At those levels of impressions, he's going to make so much money this year. I mean, that's
my thing was mainly, it was the actual real world culpability from those impressions to real world violence that has happened in the last 30 hours, right? Like he did more shit to propagate, it was IDF, crap, than Hamas ever could, right? Like Hamas just had their crappy little news conference, and that was about it. Versus Mario, they had like the science and all this shit. 30 million, that was far bigger reach than Hamas could ever do. And, if we look at what happened overnight, right, like what, half a dozen American embassies get assaulted. One of the oldest synagogues in Tunisia got burned to the ground. A shooter in Belgium, violence all over the place. And it's like real world like culpability in helping incite that, because like the sheer reach of those tweets and the space. I mean, like there's probably some people, that saw those tweets and or heard his commentary and said, "Oh my God, Israel is evil. I must do something about it." And it's just complete irresponsible reporting. It's not even reporting; it's just gossiping as a journalist. I wish I could have brought it up in the space, but I didn't get the opportunity to address that to him today. But we can keep going with the hands.
So my question for the stage would be, sorry.
John, I just want to Intel. I just want to little update because it's going to affect a lot of different. It could have some interesting effects. But yeah, John, Josh Paul resigned while on leave from state over his moral objections to the top-down order from the White House
to arm Israel.
To arm Israel, whatever it takes.
Yeah, that got a lot of chatter before I left the office. A lot of chatter. I've only met him twice, and one was a late night. We were all kind of sauced up scenario, but my boss and the CEO of my company has known him for years, and Wasn't surprised, to say the least.
Who was that? Who was that again?
He's on State Department top State Department official um, for basically representing allowing the transfer of U.S. weapons um, to allies and or other foreign military sales. And he was working as like the main John,
Is it,
you can answer it better, but he's like the main link between Congress, right, and and the administration on administering the administration's um, you actions, desires on
legislative
approving
affairs?
funding.
No,
No,
it's not legislative affairs. He is
no.
a deputy director for the State Department in charge of the office which oversees arm shipments and arm sales to our allies and friends abroad.
Most recently,
Well, to be
served
frank, he's
as
been doing a shit job then, because the State Department is in charge of much of that drawdown, and they've been, if you ask me, they've been doing a shit job of getting stuff there. I saw David Rosdo is in here. David is
yeah. He's 11 years at State's Bureau of Political Military Affairs, which tackles the weapons deals. He most recently served as the Bureau's Director of Congressional and Public Affairs.
all right. We're gonna roll the dice here. Greg, you go ahead and go, but be careful because I got my finger on the remove button. Go ahead, Greg.
Hello. I recognize a handful of people in this space. I was just gonna ask the question because I was watching the narrative unfold. I listened to Intelschizo in the space a couple days, and what I found really interesting was 2 days ago they had a exact conversation about like what would be the legality of bombing a hospital, and then yesterday this whole narrative rolled out. And what it makes me wonder is, like, when the IDF warns them, do they put cameras on hospitals and like get everything like ready in case it happens? Or like, is this all like, because the IDF is letting them know beforehand to evacuate different places and different things. So that gives them time to not only like set up cameras, but to essentially create the whole narrative before it even happens. Is that how it's working? Because it seemed to just roll out so fast, and not only fast, but it was picked up by like major news organizations.
Well, I think that's that. I don't know, possibly so. And
I can speak to that from the ground if you wish.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Avi.
So I can speak to that from the ground, from experience being on the ground in Gaza and in Judea and Samaria. The answer to that, the short answer is yes. So when Israel does a knock on the roof, and if anybody here needs an explanation of what a knock on the roof is, please let me know, and I'm happy to explain. But when Israel does a knock on the roof, you'll see cameras coming in and sort of trying to get the best angle on the building coming down. And what they'll do sometimes, and I'll be very, very careful in my words here, is try to get as much damage that Israel did not intend to happen. And sometimes that's children. And yeah, that's what happens. Now, the knock on the roof, I've heard it many, many times that Israel stopped doing that since this round started, and that's simply not true. There's video evidence of that happening. Now, is it happening in every strike? Likely not, but yes, that's what they do. When there's a warning, they'll put cameras on and wait for the strike to happen.
And like with the press conference and stuff, would that be filmed like before it even happens and then just be rolled out, or is that they're just ready to go for when it does happen? Because the stuff that was said in the press conference didn't even match what really happened. So that almost seems like they didn't have the information when they were doing the press conference.
Oh, who are you referring to as they? I'm sorry. I'm not following you.
Yeah, Hamas. There was like the Hamas one with the doctors and stuff where, if I remember, there was like said that the operating room collapsed, or
Yeah, or they could just be, lying assholes like, Hamas holes like they are. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's certainly an argument to be made that that could be the case, but I don't have any evidence saying it is. And yeah, if anybody does, please feel free to speak up.
Yeah, with this particular so I'm not a video analyst guy. I didn't really examine that particular video in terms of was it like B-roll footage or whatever. But that particular video, right? They didn't do it live. That was sent to various media organizations like an hour and a half ish after the media reports, like Twitter and everyone started going like, "Hey, something happened here." So it was just a video that was recorded and then sent to individual outlets. So it wasn't like anything live. They didn't have like an official, government media in Gaza announcement saying like, "Hey, we're going to do a presser at 2200 hours or whatever." It was just, "Here you go, BBC. Here's a video from Hamas," and that was it.
I think it was Dev. I think it was Dev, and then Mr. Pickles. Dev, go ahead, sir. And then when Dev is done, Mr. Pickles, you don't even have to ask. Just go ahead and shoot when Dev's done. Go ahead,
Dev. I'm in a mirror space right now. 2,000 people in there. Miles, you might want to look at it. It's like the reverse of this space with Solomon. You wouldn't believe what they're saying over there. But they're on Nora big time.
Yeah, as far as the Mario space, so the fact that he has bots is not disputed. In fact, he has there's articles about it, and not like small publications. Let me put, maybe I'll send a couple in the nest or send them to Intel, but he at least started with doing that, and engagement gets engagement. So if you start with like 1,000 bots, and then the people see like, oh, 1,000, I'm gonna go there. But here's the catch though. Elon or the algorithm would normally catch something like that, unless you're Elon's friend, which clearly he is. I mean, he literally came to his space, so that's how he's getting away with it. And as far as us using bots, I think Miles is my friend and everything, but I mean, it's kind of pointless anyway. Like, we're talking, we know each other. I pretty much know almost 150 people here. We spoke with them, we know each other, we know everything. So yeah, it's not numbers. And probably if you get bots, you will get more bots. So like, it will be bots listening to bots. It will be amazing. But maybe, yeah. But Miles, I'm just saying that, and then in the back channel, you know what I'm saying. All right.
So I've got a question for the space. As a whole, my office and my peer group, from Sunday forward, were really discussing, will Biden go to Israel? And we all in the space have a clear bias towards or preference for Israel and Ukraine. And I understood why his visit to Ukraine was so important. That's not our ally. That's not a part of NATO. That is a tremendous show of support for a non-aligned power. It was ballsy and great move. But the debate that I was exposed to, and I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts in regards to why Biden should not go to Israel in this case, was because we've already sent SecDef, SecState, and chairman of the Joint Chiefs. We've already sent the carriers. And unlike Ukraine, we have a constitutionally enforced, passed by the Senate, alliance with Israel. So Israel is good. There's no doubt about our degree of backing. And that by going to the visit, Biden, in many ways, going to visit Israel, in many ways, Biden owned this conflict. and whatever may have happened, whatever comes from it, and
Yeah.
good and bad. And so the debate centered around: do we show the flag to our allies and support them with the visit, or do we play geopolitics, try to get the pan-Arab Israeli alliance going once this is over, try to calm tempers, and play the long game, if you will, while still supporting. And we're not discussing supporting Israel. We're discussing whether or not it goes. You support them regardless. That's constitutionally enforced. Just so this got a lot of people in my office who are all broadly pro-Israel, kind of divided on this subject, and I'd love to hear the stage's opinion. Would you have gone as Biden, or would you have instead tried to do diplomacy from abroad and keep the Arab states aligned with Israel?
He wasn't there for support, for sure. I mean, usually when Biden goes is to restrain. That's usually what he does, or the Democrats in general. But I think he was there to try to gather the Arabs and try to find a way out of the problem. But support, I think, it's not. It's non-negotiable.
Yeah, the support is definitely non-negotiable. He may have been trying to find a way out of the situation, but that predictably Hamas would take an effort to embarrass him once he announced his intent to visit, and here we are. We have this fake hospital attack, and all those meetings were canceled. So was it wise? Would you do it? Would you advise doing it again in the future?
Let's go to Avi next if he's still in, because he had his hand up for a response first. Oh, he's out. So he had a speaker again. He's going to answer. Avi, are you there?
I had to leave and come back in because I couldn't hear some people. So, a couple of things that I want to say about Biden specifically. I think it was great that he went to Israel. If I were him in his job, I would go too. The one thing that I will also say that, I think that we may be in agreement here in this group or not. But specifically for Biden, one thing that I thought he did that was super powerful is that he came out with a couple of speeches that were very powerful, supporting Jews, not just Israel, but Jews all over the place. And I thought this was just, continuing his line of supporting Jews and right versus wrong and stuff like that. So I agree with everything that he did. The one thing that I will say that he may or may not have been sensitive to is that inside of Israel, inside of the political map that's going on right now with the fights and whatever internally is happening in Israel, this is not taken super well. This was taken as, here comes Biden to take over, and now Israel hands will be tied. Just as a perspective of sort of what's happening inside of Israel and politically.
To your point, Avi, the most vigorously against Biden going member of my office is of Israeli background and said this, at best, all this will achieve is slowing down our ground campaign, even if he's not going there to slow us down, because we can't attack while he's there, right? Or even the day after. And at worst, he's trying to restrict us. So they were steadfastly against it. So I have heard that take.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And again, I think this is the most sort of what I hear inside of Israel as well. Here comes Big Brother to sort of tell us how to fight this fight. I'm obviously paraphrasing, and I'm obviously being devil's advocate here, but absolutely the discussions have been happening, and I think also as a precursor to that. Blinken sat in the cabinet meeting for like 8 hours. And again, people also in the media were wondering, what the hell did he have to do for 8 hours? Did he influence decisions? Did he veto decisions?
Of course he did.
Of course he did. But, there is no way he did not, right? This is the bits. So yeah, just my perspective. But from my perspective, I fully support Biden going. And I fully support Biden supporting Jews and not just Israel. To me, this was super, super powerful, and I've never heard an American president speak this way.
I agree with that part entirely, Avi. His defense on the first days of the attack about Jews anywhere they live was brilliant. It's some of his best speeches. But let's imagine an alt his scenario where the hospital was not falsely attacked, and he does go to Egypt, he does go to Jordan, he does go to Saudi. The U.S. president could have been in the area for 5-6 days. And that's fine. None of us know when Israel's going to launch their attack, but that's certainly 5 to 6 days where they won't. So
If the hospital incident didn't happen, sorry to cut you off. If to me, if the hospital incident didn't happen, this was a 99% ceasefire scenario and 1% ground invasion coming in the next whatever.
really, you think that high? Interesting. Tell me more.
That's what my perspective on this. And by the way, I still think even now Israel is not going to conquer the Gaza Strip. It will go in, but it will be very limited. My opinion, right? I've only served in the IDF 3 years. I'm not a military leader, but I think that
You've done your mandatory service. I get it.
Yeah. So what I think would have happened is some heavy negotiations for either a prisoner exchange or a humanitarian release of all the children, the women, the elderly, and then Israel hands would just be tied in staying with soldiers or people that used to be soldiers and doing a prisoner exchange. That's my perspective, because if he would be there for 3, 4, 5 days, it would annihilate Israel's chances of going in. One other perspective that I want to offer here is that, and I've been on the ground on the border with the Gaza Strip waiting to go in, like thousands of soldiers, at least 3 times. These soldiers, every day that goes by, motivation goes down. And every day that goes by, Israel is paying millions and millions and millions of dollars for all the reservists. So every day that goes by and Israel does not go in, the chances go down.
I agree with that. I was disappointed they haven't gone in yet, for sure. And I have to admit I did not think the chances of a ceasefire were anywhere near as high as you just suggested. I could see the prisoner exchange happening. I thought that was very plausible as to why Biden might go prior to the hospital situation. But I hope Israel does not squander this opportunity with inaction, because they will not. They are unlikely to find a world as currently pro Israeli as it is currently for long. They're not going to find it again. They have a moment of international sympathy, so use it.
Yeah, I think that they're waiting. I think part of the calculus also is waiting for the Marine Expeditionary Unit. Also, a lot of the C-7. I mean, there's just been a moose train to Israel and um, and to Jordan, to the base in Jordan. It's been just C-17 after C-17 after C-17 for bringing in additional munitions, and then of course the mighty Ike carrier battle group getting sent over. And I think tomorrow night's going to tell us a lot, right? Oval Office address about the concerning what's going on with Israel defending itself against terrorists, Hamas, and the situation in Ukraine. And I think it plays into Biden's, you call it shtick, call it narrative, call it politics, but the democracies versus autocracies and defending um, the defense of our allies, and the threat specter from the Iranian regime and their actors, their proxies, is extremely high. And I mean, I totally, like, if it was my choice, I would have gone as well, and I wouldn't kick the can down the road anymore, personally. But I'm a hawk, so I'll stop there.
Guys, can I ask something real quick?
Sure, go ahead.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry if you guys already spoke about this. I'm sure you did to a certain extent, but I didn't participate in the Mario space today. I was wondering if anyone could give me a very brief recap of what was discussed, if they, reached some sort of reasonable conclusion about the cause of the hospital bombing and things like that. My hopes aren't super high, given that I was there yesterday and for parts of it today, but just wondering if anyone could fill me in.
So wait, so those that aid and abet terrorists came to a reasonable conclusion? Like what?
Yeah, like I said,
There
my
was
hope
nothing
my hopes
reasonable
aren't
about
high.
it. It was screaming and yelling and bizarre cognitive dissonance the entire time.
Yeah.
Also, guys,
It
I
was,
just want to bring something up, some clarity to something that was brought up earlier. Ilhan Omar did come out with a statement saying bombing a hospital is among the gravest of war crimes. The IDF reportedly blowing up one of the few places the injured and wounded can go. And and then it was she writes, our office cited an AP report yesterday that the IDF had hit Baptist Hospital in Gaza. Since then, the IDF has denied responsibility, and U.S. intelligence assessment is not that this was not done by Israel. It is reminded that information is often unreliable and disputed. The fog of war, especially on Twitter, where misinformation is rampant. We all have a responsibility to ensure the information we are sharing is from credible sources and to acknowledge as new reports come in, it's critical that we have fully independent investigation to determine conclusively who is responsible for this war crime. So she's walking it halfway back. She's basically saying, instead of
What do
it
you
was
want? You want
definitely
it in,
Israel, now
so
it's
it's
we
either
don't
out.
know who it
You're
is.
not playing.
I think that was pretty measured, and while it wasn't a complete repudiation, that was a pretty good. Oops, we were wrong.
Yeah, totally. Problem is, the cat is out of the bag or out of the hat or whatever the saying is, and there's all these riots going on all over the world because people
Damage
just
is
jump
done.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Nick, did you have your hand
right.
up?
Yes, I did, but that's okay. It
Go
was
ahead, Nick.
nothing important. We moved on, so that's
Go
okay.
ahead, Nick. Okay, all right. Cece, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I had a different topic though. If Skykiss wanted to weigh on it, the current one.
Skykiss, you have something regarding current topic or something different?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say that I did weigh in on the thread about that, and with both AP called them out, said they were. I expected more of AP. Have respected that particular group. I have a number of friends, writers, and photographers who work for AP. It was just so. Also called out Representative Omar about her stance. I just felt it was wrong. She just jumped to conclusions and didn't wait. And people in government, positions of power should be more careful. So anyway, did someone say that the AP came out and apologized?
No.
Okay, they haven't yet. All right. Thank you.
I mean, maybe John might know.
The Wall Street Journal and the New York Times have both printed forms of retractions. I subscribe to both periodicals, and they have, and they've changed their headlines and they're added a lot of context to both their original and their articles, and they've put it in footnotes. As for the AP, I don't know. I can't speak to that.
Yeah, and BBC. I mean, at least they're trying over there, but they're still just assuming that Hamas is telling them the truth. So like they were like, we went to like 20 institutions and like most of them refused to comment to us, and they're just doing what Mario is doing. They're like, okay, well we haven't found any evidence that it was an Israeli bomb, but if it was an Israeli bomb, how could it be an Israeli bomb? And we're flabbergasted. Like, and essentially, they're just like sitting there in shock, being like, "Well, we have the photos, and we don't know what's going on." So complete piss poor journalism over there at the BBC, and their reporters that were doing the live segments. There's been no retractions or statements of clarity from them when they were on air last night saying there's conceivably no munition that Hamas and the PIJ have in their arsenals. It's like, did none of you guys look at 2014 or 2007? Like, Hamas and the PIJ have continuously, over the last 2 decades, expanded their arsenal, missile model by missile model, and they can now hit literally all of Israel. Granted, those larger rockets and missiles are very finite in number, but they've been able to hit all of Israel since 2014, with warheads of 1,500 pounds traveling at Mach 5. So it's like, the fuck are you guys talking about over there, BBC? There's just no research. Like, they didn't even bother typing in PIJ rocket on Google. Like, just complete piss poor journalism over there.
Yeah, no, 100%, and the same goes for Mario's space. I mean, it's borderline intolerable, if not completely intolerable. The fact that he gives, a platform to accounts like Syrian Girl and things like that, who, even cast doubt as to the killing of people at the Nova Music Festival. I was at a fundraiser event tonight where a survivor of that music festival spoke, and she said something along the lines of most people at that music festival died in crossfires between Israelis and the terrorists. So the fact that he's given a microphone to that person in front of 20,000 plus people is just crazy.
What really bugs me, and sorry to cut in here, what really bugs me is that there's so much video evidence taken by the terrorists themselves and uploaded by the terrorists themselves, including them taking a family and taking one of the kids, going house to house, having him say, "Hey, come out," in Hebrew, obviously. They will not shoot you, I promise, only for them to come out and immediately get shot. I mean, just to me, this, like, if any credibility, this needs to be shut down immediately. This needs to be shut down. And to me, when I heard that, I completely discounted everything that's happening after that in any of Mario's spaces. This is just pure propaganda, pure evil and misinformation. If that claim is not met immediately with evidence, that's, I mean, how could it be more clear cut than that? I don't know. I'm rambling, but it's fucked up.
It really is. It's like that. It's like that meme that's gone around. It's like, we didn't understand how people could deny the Holocaust, and then terrorists filmed themselves carrying out attacks with a GoPro, and people started denying it the next day. So it's crazy stuff.
Go ahead, Cece.
Yeah, Avi, thanks for sharing that. If we can all, everybody here, 178 people, can all just take a moment to appreciate. I feel like sometimes topics, especially in spaces, jump around so fast. And my brain, of all brains, loves that. But there's times we need to just take a moment of what someone said, like what Avi just said about that kid that they used to get people to come out, and just really take a moment to absorb the level of evil that takes. It's pretty horrid. So I just wanted to say that, as opposed to going on to my thing immediately, because it's just so other level. It's hard to even wrap your mind around. But if we want this funding for Israel and Ukraine, we have a problem. So today, so I don't know for anybody that doesn't know. I'm all about advocacy, so I always dwell in these spaces that are about, on these House of Representatives pages, the people that follow them and try to track trends. And I have to say, today was I really was dwelling in the bowels of these people. And when I say bowels, I mean bowels in all senses of the word here. Because what I noticed in all of these, all these reps that were either switch their votes to Jordan or double down on their Jordan votes, the people that were supporting them, and fervently so, they want, because then I would just follow, because I'm not going to just take a sample, right, as a one off or a couple off, but I would see what they're doing. And they want to gum up they got the abortion was their wet dreams, right? They got all the judges they want. They've gotten all of these things they want. And they talk about that. And they were talking about, look, we've got crucial government funded for the next year. They're all about shutting down the government. This isn't about wanting Jordan even. It's about wanting to shut down the government. And so when you go to all these pages, these people who are they're the people who always go to these same reps over and over again, trying to threaten them, cajole them into voting for Jordan. You could just see this incredible theme, this leitmotif of hey, we want to gum up the works. So money to Ukraine, money to Israel right now. They need in such a dire fashion. And what the government is doing now, because there's been such wrestling matches over each of these each time, is that's what the $100 billion, I think some people haven't heard. So it's $100 billion that the president is going to put on the table here, and that it's going to go to the House to vote on. So they don't want these monies for foreigners voted on, right? They don't want this money. They look at it as their taxpayer money. So they're trying to gum up the works and throw wrenches in the cogs in the machine. And that's what this fucking Jordan vote is all about. It's not even that they even want Jordan as much as they want government to shut down. They want the shutdown. And so that's why I just love it when you guys all write me and tell me your anecdotes of your calling and writing, because we really are fighting these people who are doing the same thing on the other side, trying to shut down the government. I mean, they tried to do it literally when they stormed the Capitol, and now they're trying to do it, well, literally too, but in a different manner, on the floor, right? If they can't get in there and kill people and stop stuff that way, then they're going to do it this way. And I think a lot of people just don't realize the extent of this, because it's pretty crazy, right? Sounds a little conspiracy theory, but after just days of really tracking and talking to some journalists, tracking all of these people, this is their intent. They want government to shut down. So thank you. And y'all, I put in the nest there, keep on keeping on with these people, because it's third in the nest. Here are the 22 Republican reps who voted with courage and conscience today in the speaker vote. The number of reps supporting Jim Jordan has decreased, even though reps LaMalfa and Sparts changed their votes back. Oh, to the person that wrote me and was asking me who the Ukrainian was that changed their vote, it's Victoria Sparts changed their votes back to support Jordan. So, that's some more subterfuge there, right? Why is a Ukrainian stopping? And it'll probably be around, the split will be 60-40. So 60 billion will go to Ukraine, and then the 40 billion will be split between Israel, Taiwan, and the border. So we got to keep up this pressure to call, write, email, because we're actually literally trying to keep our own government open against people who are trying to shut it down. So it's not just oh, we want our football team to win. It's no, we want the actual field, the stadium, the school, and et al. To actually exist, because they really are just trying to shut it all down so that nobody gets any money. And Aaron's space is starting. If someone wants to put that in
And if you call those Republicans who are on CC's list about funding for supporting Israel and for supporting Ukraine, You know, ask him also about, you know, like, hey, why don't you get your fucking shit together so that you can actually fund the National Defense Authorization Act, like in addition to you know, the PDA, because you know, Americans were just fucking killed and they're being held hostage. And it'd be nice if our fucking military, you know, like we're fully fucking funded. We had a working government. So maybe get off your fucking asses and do the little piddly little job that you have and stop playing you know, bullshit, these bullshit fucking MAGA
But
type
do be
politics.
nice and do be polite, because if you're rude, they won't write down what you're saying.
Oh yeah, I mean, listen to CC on that. I mean, but CC, whatever. I don't give a fuck. I mean, I'm
I don't
talking
care if
for a
you don't
second.
give a fuck, Brandon, but these are people that don't know, some of them, how to talk to
Yeah, but you're
staffers.
like,
Be
but
civil and polite.
you just didn't let me even finish my fucking point. So, you know what? Don't worry about it. I won't talk in the space. You effectively muted me with your need to have me speak in a way that then properly entices people to use obviously adult intelligent language when they call their representatives. But okay, yeah, sure.
Well, anyways, I did put in the nest. Just a second here, dying. A link to the Balmer report. Typically, I'm my co-host on that. So unfortunately, it's Wednesday, my dudes. Will be coming to an end here, and I will be hopping on the Balmer report, where we talk OSINT stuff, mainly military centric things. Hope to see you guys over there. Nick, I'll let you go ahead real quick, and then we'll close the space out. And again, I did put a link in the nest if anyone wants to swing over.
Well, and of course, that's where I'm going next as well. But one thing I wanted to point out, when you're, and just as Cece said, it's like there's no reason not to be polite and respectful. You're in a professional setting. You are actually representing not only your ideas or your communication, but yourself. So if you're going to be rude and obnoxious, nobody wants you. I mean, I don't know about the rest of you, but I was raised with manners. And you say please and thank you, and you can, and if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. But there are some exceptions when it comes to Russians and other things. But basically, when it's dealing,
Don't do that.
you know, with representatives, you have to be as professional and polite as possible.
All right.
Intel, can I ask or
Yep.
field a question?
Sure.
Cece brought up that we have, you know, well, let's look at the House. What's going on at the House? And she had brought up about they are trying to shut down, you know, basically anything from happening there in the House. My question is I wanted to field this question. What are your theories on why they wanted to shut down the government? And that is, I think, what we all should be searching for the answer for. Why are they wanting to shut things down? Why do we have such things like promotions, military promotions not being put forward for something that's absolutely political? Why are these things being put into motion? That's what I want answers on. Does that make sense?
Because they're egotistical nihilists. That's why. They and they're all on this bandwagon, like grifting ass bandwagon, being like, we need to stop the new world order run by every billionaire except Elon Musk, and the Chinese CCP influence operations run by the cultist, Satan, transgender, communist, Antifa, buzzword, groups that have hijacked the World Economic Forum 2030 plan, where they're going to put the microchips in the fluoride that goes in the drinking supply and turns all the kids gay. Like it's just a whole bunch of dumb shit. And they would rather just watch it all burn down in their self-serving interest. It's just stupid. They're just, frankly, the MAGA wing is just gone off the deep end, and they would tear everything down to appease their conspiratorial bullshit.
Well, CC's been talking to them, and I wanted to see if she had, and she left, but I wanted to see if she had a glimpse into, like, while she was in there, talking to different people, if she picked up anything as to, I don't know, like, I don't know, I'm not a conspiracist, but I mean, are these people trying to break our democracy? Is that what they're trying to do? I'm.
They believe that the democracy is gone already, and so they want to just go down with the ship and just blow it up as it goes down. Take all the silverware on the way down.
All right. Well, I know that you need to get over into air and space. I think you said something about you're normally a co-host, so I don't want to hold you up anymore. But that is something like I wonder if anybody has really done any true investigation on it. I'm sorry, my dog is going crazy, so I will let you guys go. And if anybody has any like any pieces to the puzzle that can unravel anything that we could put out there to put them under it first would be great.
Gotcha. That could be a different space. Yeah, so we'll close this out and go into the Balmer report. We're going to be talking military stuff. So hope to see you guys over there. Thank you for coming in.